Sparks fly as the Supreme Court upholds a ban on abortion counseling at government-funded clinics. New signs that the recession may be bottoming out, and the disasters that might have been. Shuttles flying with defective parts. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. The United States Supreme Court handed down a decision today that has the anti-abortion forces cheering. CBS News law correspondent Rita Braver has more about this decision and its impact.
There was dismay at places like the Hub Clinic in the South Bronx that serve mostly poor women. Dismay that the U.S. Supreme Court upheld the Reagan-Bush policy barring federally funded family planning clinics like this one from giving any information about abortion.
Poor women will have no choices. All choices are being removed from them because they won't be able to have information that should be available to any woman, regardless of her status.
I mean, that's our rights. I don't see why they should take that away from us.
But anti-abortion groups were elated.
Well, congratulations. Yes, it's very good. It's very good.
Family planning funds should not be used for abortion-related services. And this builds the necessary wall of separation between what really should be...
Rejected arguments that the policy violates the free speech rights of doctors to talk honestly with their patients or interferes with a woman's basic right to choose abortion. Writing for the 5-member majority, Chief Justice William Rehnquist no constitutionalize an activity merely because it is constitutionally protected and may validly choose to fund childbirth over abortion. But 4 justices dissented, with Harry Blackmun claiming that for millions of poor women, the government will have obliterated the freedom to choose as surely as if it had banned abortions outright.
My greatest fear is that we'll go back to where women will be going into back rooms with illegal abortionists trying to get abortions.
The newest Justice, David Souter, tipped the balance against abortion rights in his first Supreme Court vote on the subject, thus fueling speculation on how he'll vote in the future.
We don't want to make judgments or rush to conclusions on Mr. Souter, but it certainly is not encouraging.
We're very encouraged by Justice Souter's vote, even though this wasn't a case that directly affected Roe v. Wade.
Some members of Congress say they'll try to pass legislation undoing today's decision, but there's not much they can do about the court's march away from the unrestricted right to abortion. Dan.
Thanks a lot, Rita. There are some new indications tonight that the recession may be beginning to end. The government announced that orders for durable goods surged nearly 3% last month. Business correspondent Ray Brady has more on what all this may mean to you.
The good news came in automobiles, up for the latest sales period, and sales of durable goods like refrigerators also rose. All that made President Bush optimistic today.
Incidentally, on the recession, I am feeling more confident about its fact that we're, if not have bottomed out, are bottoming out.
The president's words were echoed by a group of prominent economists, predicting the nation could be out of recession by June. But down in the trenches, in stores and auto showrooms, businessmen worry that any pickup may be temporary, like the one just after the Gulf War.
I have been a Buick dealer for 23 years, and we have been through 5 downturns in the industry, and this is without a doubt the worst we've seen.
This is $27,000.
Not only do buyers not have money, says auto dealer Mark Herman, many of them can't get loans from banks still burned by bad loans from the past.
The marginal customer, who in the past might have not had much difficulty in achieving a loan, is finding at this point it's almost impossible.
But for recovery, say economists, autos and housing must pick up. But builders, like car buyers, can't get loans. Estimates are 200,000 houses that would have been built in normal times won't be built because of tight credit.
I think they're being very prudent now. The question is, perhaps they've been, their prudence is a couple years too late. And as a result of that, a very significant portion of the economy is going to be constrained.
In the last recession, President Reagan pushed through a package of tax cuts and investment incentives that helped pull the nation out of the recession. But now, this administration is strapped for funds. It can't afford to cut taxes or spend to stimulate the economy.
For the first time, this administration has no ammunition to get us out of this recession. They have to try to talk their way out of this problem.
Ray, why are there so many conflicting opinions about whether the recession has bottomed out?
Well, Dan, the problem is one day the economic news seems good, the next day it isn't. We're going to have a recovery, but so far there's been no strong, clear signal to say this is it. The good times are here.
Ray Brady, thanks. There are new questions tonight about NASA's ability to control its contractors, its ability to find and fix technical problems that could kill a space shuttle crew. It now turns out that some of the last shuttle missions have been flirting with catastrophe. Aaron Hayes has the story.
We have ignition and liftoff of Discovery on a research flight.
NASA didn't know it then, but when the shuttle Discovery went up last month, it was carrying dangerously faulty parts, temperature probes with cracks in them.
There's nothing in between the probe and the pumps on the engine, so if one did let go, it'd be a bad day.
More likely a catastrophe. If any of a half-dozen probes had broken off, they would have slammed into delicate pumps that in turn could have broken apart into a shuttle engine, and that could have caused a Challenger-like explosion. Critics of NASA are furious over the news.
NASA really has to be rebuilt from maybe the top down or the ground up.
The trouble goes back to September, when the shuttle Columbia had hydrogen leaks and NASA, looking for the cause, sent a temperature probe off for analysis. That probe was cracked, but NASA didn't know it for months because first, the probe was sent to the wrong lab, and then the report on it sat for over a month before NASA even got it. Though the cracks in the probe proved to be frighteningly critical, NASA says it had not been assigned top priority.
It goes through a routine kind of a process where you do it without putting overtime on it, without putting extra time on it, and so it just wasn't expedited through the process. That's all I can say.
The fumbling has some wondering whether change is needed at NASA.
We are going to have to build a new generation of so-called expendable launch vehicles, lighter, smaller, cheaper launch vehicles that don't put billions of dollars and many human lives at risk every time we launch a large satellite.
Columbia now sits on the pad. The probes aboard will all be replaced. The bigger question now, though, goes beyond the shuttles to NASA itself. Is it time to consider replacing more than just the parts? Aaron Hayes, CBS News, Atlanta.
Still ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News, a new shock in India. Gandhi's widow says no. And later, a diamond in the roughest part of town. The government of India is planning an elaborate state funeral for former Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi tomorrow. Mapping a way out of the crisis his assassination has brought will not be easy. Bill Whitaker reports live tonight from New Delhi. Good evening, Bill.
This nation is in shock and turmoil tonight. Police now have new information on who killed Rajiv Gandhi, but politicians are trying to figure out who, if anybody, can replace him in Indian politics. There was no violence today outside the family home where Rajiv Gandhi's body is lying in state. Only the wails and tears of mourners. They came by the thousands in heat topping 100 degrees for a brief glimpse of his flower-draped coffin. While the nation grieves, Gandhi's Congress party is scrambling to find a new leader. His widow, Sonia, tapped to succeed her husband as party president. Today, she and her children are too distraught by the tragedy. Her refusal could bring an end to the family's political dynasty and leaves her husband's party in disarray.
He's left us at a time when we needed him the most. It's created a void which is very difficult to fill at the moment.
The once dominant Congress party is now counting on a wave of sympathy to sweep it to power when elections are resumed next month. Opposition leaders are skeptical.
The sympathy wave would be too feeble to enable the party to tide over this loss.
Rajiv Gandhi piloted a small plane down to the city of Madras Monday, where police now say he was killed by a suicide bomber believed to be a Tamil rebel fighting for a separate state on the island of Sri Lanka. The body of his female assassin was found on the scene wired with explosives. Police were out in force today to prevent further violence, while a military honor guard practiced the slow cadence for tomorrow's funeral. Leaders of all major parties say they fear Political violence is becoming a way of life here in India, and they're calling on their supporters to use the ballot, not bombs and bullets. Dan?
Bill, with so many dignitaries in for tomorrow's big funeral, are there renewed concerns about possible violence and more assassination?
Well, yes, there are. This has been the most violent election in India's history, and with so many dignitaries here tomorrow, there's concern that there could be renewed violence. In fact, there are some dignitaries who will not be walking in the funeral procession through the city tomorrow, fearing for their safety. Dan?
Bill Whitaker, thanks. Bill Whitaker live from New Delhi tonight. More than 150 U.S. military and civilian experts will be moving into the Iraqi provincial capital of Tahuk tomorrow. Their mission, repair damage and restore electricity and other basic services to further encourage Kurdish refugees to return home. And in other developments around the world today, President Bush nominated General Colin Powell to a second two-year term as chairman of the Military Joint Chiefs of Staff. There remains talk that Powell's next career move could be a run for political office. In Leningrad, a Soviet airliner on a domestic flight crashed while trying to land in heavy rain. The plane broke into 3 pieces. At least 11 of the 140 people on board were killed. In Washington, a standoff at the Supreme Court between police and a deranged man with a knife. The police got the knife away, but the man bolted inside the court building before finally being caught. In Baltimore, Hall of Famer Frank Robinson of the last-place Orioles became the 3rd manager in 3 days to get the boot. Robinson will move to the Orioles front office. And in Montreal today, the National League's first no-hitter of the season, 24-year-old Tommy Green of the Philadelphia Phillies held the Expos hitless and won the game 2-0.
Tommy Green, a no-hitter.
Stay with us now for more news, including the Soviet newsroom in San Francisco, why it can't pay its bills.